better. That's better. Today's tutorial is on cross contour drawing. So cross contour drawing is one of many different ways that we can create a three-dimensional illusion on our two-dimensional piece of paper. There's lots of other ways to do this: linear perspective, planar structure. Cross contour does it in its own unique way. So we can start with any shape, but let's say an ellipse. Let's do this one. This one we had fun with this week in one of my drawing classes, a kind of donut shape. Let's pick another form. Let's just do a kind of amoeba form. Now, this particular technique works best with organic, natural forms. You can use it on geometric forms. It just starts to get into a little bit more of a linear perspective thing at that point. So let's take a look. Two things we need to keep in mind with cross contour. First is our line of sight. This is similar to a linear perspective technique in that we do have a line of sight when we're doing a perspective drawing. The line of sight is otherwise known as the horizon line, our eye level. We have to keep that in mind for these drawings, at least at the outset, to just have a sense for our eye level, our line of sight. So let's take a look at cross contour. All right, let's start with form one up here. Let's start this one, and let's say our eye level is close to what my eye level is here. So kind of like right in the middle of this object. Line of sight with a horizontal surface terrain scan of this object would just be a horizontal line, okay? Everything above my line of sight is going to slowly curve towards what? It's going to slowly curve towards this kind of curve that we already have at the top. So this curve, any curve around the edge, is the event horizon around which, from our limited perspective, we are unable to see anymore, right? So we have something that starts off here, and it's going to slowly kind of get a little more bent as it heads up towards the top of this form. And then as we look down the form, so my line of sight is here looking down now, I'm going to end up something like that. So you can see line of sight, kind of like perspective, kind of like linear perspective. So I'm going to put a little line here, and I'm going to put a little eyeball. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, that's my line of sight. Now this is a horizontal pass. Now, when I'm doing this, I could have it a little thicker towards the edges and get a little thinner towards the middle. I could have it thicker in the middle and get thinner towards the edge. Those kind of changes will enhance the three-dimensional illusion of the drawing. Right now I'm keeping it fairly consistent just to demonstrate this idea of this horizontal banding, and now we're going to do some vertical banding. So we're just going to drop a straight line down in the middle because this is a very symmetrical form. It's straight up and down, so I can just drop this vertical line in here, and again, everything off to the left and right is slowly bending. And what I'm imagining as I'm doing this, so you're not totally wondering about how I'm coming up with these angles here, I'm imagining that every one of these vertical bands terminates in a little point down here and terminates in a little point up here. So each of these, I'm kind of imagining, would go down here and kind of reach eventually that point. Some of these lines do it a little better than others, but this will kind of give me, all that does is it gives you a cohesive structure, and it starts to create this sense of what was previously just an ellipse, now all of a sudden has this three-dimensional form to it. The vertical as well as the horizontal lines, as they're kind of disappearing from us, they're kind of getting more and more foreshortened. So it's okay if we have a little extra horizontal lines towards the edges. Let's jump from here to a slightly bigger example. So here's my line of sight up here, and I'm looking down. As I'm looking down at this ellipse, or this egg shape now, each of these cross-section portions that I've drawn, I'm imagining that each of those goes around the back of the form too. So it goes around the front, and then it goes around the back, and it meets itself over here. So this angle can't shoot off in some weird direction. It's it has to kind of come over here so that the trajectory is just right. It's kind of orbiting on this path, right? Our little satellite is orbiting here, and it needs to go around this way, and then it needs to come back up around this kind of central axis here. And the same thing goes for these vertical bands. I'm going to just pick a random vertical band here. And what I'm imagining is that it starts on this point, drops down, rides the curve, and then it's going to end back up at a point on the bottom. And once it passes that point, then it's riding that edge back up again. Okay, so this is just a kind of little exploded diagram of what is actually going on if this was see-through. Let's do the donut next. Ring, donut. This one's actually surprisingly tricky here. Let's start with this vertical pass. Vertical, vertical. Again, nice symmetrical form. We have this vertical situation in the middle with our cross contour lines. Everything to the right is going to curve out this way. Everything to the left is going to curve that way. So the cross section immediately facing me, I'm not going to see the left or right of because I'm lined perfectly up with it. Like if I was facing the side of my paper here, I'm not seeing the front or the back, I'm just seeing the edge. So here's my edge. Now, as I start to move around this form, I'm going to start to see a little bit more. Now I'm getting to this point where they start to become vertical again. And so each of these front vertical bands that we can see, I'm imagining is riding also along the back edge. The idea of drawing it in a transparent way like this is that it helps you get a sense for what these frontal angles really are, because they need to disappear around one edge of the form, kind of go around the backside that we can't see, the dark side of the moon, and then it swings again back around the front. And drawing this form in this transparent way allows us to try to engage with those angles and understand them a little bit better. And I would do the same to the other side here. Zip, zip. So I'll leave this side a little more opaque so we can see just these kind of vertical bands here. And I'll leave this side a suggestion of more of the transparency that we're looking for. And this area is really key here because of all that compression and foreshortening. So you really got to kind of nail that area. This, again, is just the vertical banding. We also have to, let's cut it through the middle here. And here's a horizontal line riding around the back. Let's get one riding around the front. And since we're looking into this, our line of sight is somewhere up here looking down, right? And again, this band going around the front needs to disappear around the back, and it would be riding along that edge, and we would have some more bands down here. A donut like this, as you can see, is a very tricky form to get just right with this cross contour. But if you kind of are diligent and really work at it, you can get something pretty good. Good enough. So a couple other key points to bring up here. So let's say this is a form that we are looking wholly up at. So our line of sight, that's this line, we're looking up. So I'm looking up, 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 up. Okay, vertical pass as well. Again, all of this is just made up right now. But this, like any other drawing technique, it's really about just trusting the process. Okay, so when we started drawing like this, and I'm doing it in this like super strict way, like I'm even erasing my first marks to try to stick just to this horizontal vertical thing. This is like a very dry way of doing it. It's very lifeless. You know, it achieves a certain technical effect, but it's very dry. It's very clinical. It's very cold. And so what I suggest is not like staying in this level. This is like intro level, just getting a handle for the techniques. What I suggest doing is bringing in a more organic way of working with this, with more lines, densely packed in some areas, more loosely packed in other areas, and just riding around the forms. Once you have a basic sense of your line of sight and a basic sense of these forms, then we can start to come in with other lines working in concert to create this structure. What I mean by that is we could have lines that are coming up at a diagonal like that, maybe over here too. And in terms of what is the exact angle that I'm using the angle that feels right to me. And I'm trying to give a sense that even though I'm using these other angles, they're not the horizontal, they're not the vertical, I still have to feel that these angles are actually riding around the surface, and that any one of these angles could theoretically come back around and meet it. It kind of, the snake kind of eating its own tail, should be able to kind of go around. It should give you this sense of three-dimensional structure. And for my money, this starts to breathe some life into the drawing, right? Because before it's kind of like a computer, like a CGI wireframe kind of thing. Now we're starting to get to a little more personality, a little more depth. Any work of art is more than a technique, you know? So when I start to do this, I'm playing with cross contour. If I start to bring in some more of these lines, some people might ask, isn't that just cross hatching? And my answer is yes and no. It is in the sense that you have lines crossing each other that are building up value, because as you can tell, I'm starting to build up value here. Cross hatching usually means you're crisscrossing lines that are straight. You start with one direction and you go in the other direction just like we did, and then you go diagonally, but you keep all of the lines straight. Cross contour, as you push it further and the lines become more dense here and there, let's do some of that here, is doing some of this, but it is doing it through this warping of space that cross contour seeks out. So in a kind of very strict way, we're stuck on this realm, but as we push it farther, and I think more in a more unique personal direction, a more organic, free-flowing direction, a more intuitive direction, then it starts to dip into other drawing techniques like cross hatching. I'm still going to say this is cross contour. It's just a very dense form of cross contour. This is like level 1 of cross contour, just having this understanding of form and structure. But as you push forward, you get to like level 2, which is starting to make your lines a little more intuitive and organic, but they are still doing the same thing. They're still pulling and wrapping three-dimensionally around this form. And one of the last things I'll say about this here is most people draw with an outline. They put an outline around something, and let's go back to one of our first shapes here. They put an outline around an ellipse or an egg or whatever they're drawing, or a face, and then they start to maybe like finger smudge to get something in the middle here, right? Or they might like shade it a little bit, but they don't really know like how to address this. This gives you a way of engaging with the structure in a more or less methodical way. It just gives you a technique to get in there and really start to work with the interior of the form. The other way you could do that is through planar structure. That's for another video, but this is how we address inner structure using cross contour. And I hope this helps some people out in understanding what this technique is. Thanks.